which is good. Okay. Anyway, okay, I'm hoping that you guys are all enjoying Busan too. Okay, so this amazing panel here, we have three panel members here. So from the order listed in the program book, we have Andrew Sullivan here, and then Giovanni Esposito, and Ning Liu. And because my voice here, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Hi all, my name is Andrew Sullivan. I'm an assistant professor at University of Central Florida and director of our Center for Public and Nonprofit Management.
Hello everyone, I'm Giovanni Esposito, an associate professor at the University of Brussels, so the French-speaking University of Brussels, where I also direct a research center, which is basically the ULB research unit on public policy and administration.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ning Liu. I'm an associate professor from the Department of Public and International Affairs, City University of Hong Kong. I'm also co-editor of Regulation and Governance. Very nice meeting you.
So I mean, when I first look at the program book and ask for to be a moderator, when I see the name of the list here, all three scholars, I was pretty amazed. How did you invite all of them, these amazing scholars? So they haven't published in top tier journal and actively working as a co-editor and also the center and also a lot of big projects. So they'll be the ones who are uniquely positioned to share their experience and their views on international collaboration. So this panel will be following the order. First, they will have brief presentation about their views on international collaboration. And after that, we will have the question and also the open Q&A sessions. So we will start with the presentation of Dr. Sullivan.
Oh, I had emailed them. Jinsel, do you have the slides? I can go ahead and start while they pull up the slides because they're actually not that interesting. So as I said, my name is Andrew Sullivan. A little bit of the background with my research agenda. So I mentioned I'm in the School of Public Administration, but we have urban planning, public policy, nonprofit management, and emergency management all in our department. And so my main area of study is homelessness and housing. And so this has been really great to pull it all together. But this has also been really great to make interdisciplinary and international collaborations too. Part of the fun of working in a research center too, we get to invite visiting scholars. So we've had several in the past. We're going to have 5 from Korea coming to work with us this fall and this coming year, partly because of my colleague Sung Ho, who's bringing a bunch of Korean government officials that are very high up. And so our students and our faculty will get to learn a lot, and this will help a lot too. With my, I counted my co-authors. So I have 25 publications. I have 23 co-authors, and 16 of them are not from the US. So I'm American from the US. 10 are from Korea, 6 are from China. The rest are American, but that also actually includes 2 Korean Americans who are American, but actually went to Seoul National. Oh, can you hit the next slide, please? Oh, I will move over here. And so I picked out some of those publications to show my research agenda, but then also the international collaborators. So everyone in blue there, and this isn't all of them, is an international collaborator. I've published 10 papers with someone, Sareem Kim, but then several other people. But you can also see my research agenda right here. So everything in green, you'll notice is homelessness, homeless services, homelessness, homeless services. So you can kind of guess what my research agenda is here. But you can also see this intersection with other areas. So I've done things with education. So looking at students experiencing homelessness and how they navigate high school and then go on to college. I've done ones with how opening up a homeless shelter affects housing prices. A big area of my research with Sareem has been this idea of mandated collaboration, where service providers have to work together to solve a complicated problem, homelessness. This morning, I really like the term polycrisis in the one presentation about these intersecting problems. But I think that's a big area that I'm moving towards also, where we're also working with people from College of Medicine, people from sociology, urban planning, but transportation. But you can kind of get the sense here of this research agenda and how it goes together. Criminal justice has been a big new one. But focusing on the international piece, how I've made these connections, it's almost all been people I went to school with. So Sareem I went to school with I haven't co-authored with him, but we went to school together, Jinsol. Or someone I work with. So Kim, S, that's Sareem. Chongwei Park went to school with. David Lee, he was at Iwa, now at Sunking-Won, was at Hawaii before that. But we met at a conference, so we met at ASPA, but he studies homelessness too. But how this happened was I had a very clear research identity in what I wanted to do. And so it wasn't just, hey, let's go work together. It was, oh, you study homelessness also, you study collaboration. Let's talk about some ideas and see what kind of comes out of this. Some other people, Kwok, I went to school with. Number 6 there, that's with some people from University of Hong Kong in Renmin. But Liu, S is now a UCF professor, Shuang. And so we've been working together, but this has been a new area too. And kind of brought me to study other international issues. And so they had all this data from experiments with left behind children and migrant children in China and Hong Kong. And so this has been a connection to a different area of housing insecurity. But again, this kind of came about because I had a very clear research agenda. How it worked was actually UCF, our school, they had a mini internal grant where you had to work with someone outside of your department. So we had both started at the same time. She's in social work, actually. And so we started working together on this, but this is how I got connected to this international group. But again, how most of this has happened, it hasn't just been like, let's come up with a research paper right away. It's come up with your own research identity. If you were at the editors panel, they talked a lot about like, what do you do? Don't go chasing trends necessarily, but like, what do you do as a researcher? But then that'll help you make collaborations too, because then they know, oh, this is what it would be. And a lot of these too, they've developed over years. Someone I just co-authored with recently, we had been, actually Hanna Leibovitz, we had been talking for several years. We actually published this paper without ever meeting in person, which was really interesting. We met after we published the paper, but I think this is a very valuable thing. Same thing with the Hong Kong team and China team. I've met Shuang because we work together, but the rest of the team, we've only met on Zoom. And I think this is really valuable now because I think people are very open to having just this. We don't even need to go to a conference where it costs $1,000 to go. It's let's have a 30-minute Zoom chat. Let's talk about our ideas and maybe where we intersect. Some more practical things I've kind of learned about co-authorship, and especially maybe that applies internationally. So I mentioned almost all have been a classmate or a coworker. I'm not necessarily just going to random people and saying, hey, let's work together. It's we have some clear idea where we're each bringing something, and that's kind of the second bullet point, but we're bringing something to this area. We also have, you need to have some shared understanding of some of the following, and I find direct communication is probably the best way to go about this, but do you have the same field or research interest? You don't want to force something. Co-authoring is a lot of work. It's a big commitment. You don't want to force something. Do you share some field or research interest? Do you share the same priorities? And so I think in Korea, corresponding author means something for points. It's meaningless in the United States. It's just who submits the publication. But it actually counts for something. So do we have the same priorities? Same way if your school has, like I know in Korea too, like SSCI journals are valued a lot and they get extra points, or maybe if it's not SSCI, it doesn't get the full points or something. In the US, there's kind of, it depends. It's not the same. And so do you have these shared interests or shared priorities and expectations? Do you have the same role? One of the questions we got was about roles and work style. You don't necessarily need the same work style, but you want to make sure you have a nice team. And it's not, you can only be one of these things. Some of these things I think of when I think of the good teams, it's like a visionary, like what's the big idea? What's the meaningful thing behind this? What's the important questions? But you also need someone to do it. Like it's great to talk all day, but if you don't have someone who sits down and writes the paper, it's never gonna be a paper. Someone who maybe brings the methods. And then this came up with the editors panel too, but who can tell the story very effectively? And it's not that you can only be one of these things. Usually people are all these things to different extents, but how do you bring this team and what is someone contributing to this? And that's the next one. What will they bring? As classmates or co-workers, we usually were peers. So I wasn't really co-authoring with a very senior person. That's only happened for 2 of the papers. For the most part, we're peers and we have these discussions, very equal partnerships. We're all contributing. I like to say we're all contributing 100%. Some other fields, there will be co-authors who have never even seen the paper because it's a lab of 20 people and they've never even read the paper that's getting published. I usually work in small teams. If I go back, for most of these, it's only 1 or 2 co-authors. Number 6 had 3 co-authors. It's usually very small teams. And so that's what I meant by we're all contributing a lot. And so you'll want to understand too, what are they bringing? Do we have the same expectations for what it means to be a co-author? Sometimes it's also exploring similar questions, but in new contexts. So I have a paper using data from South Korea with a student on unemployment and job centers. The new research agenda with Chinese youth, migrant and left behind children and being raised by their grandparents as kind of a new aspect of housing security that I've been studying in the United States too. And so maybe it's just bringing this new context. But my most important takeaway is like, don't rush into it. It can be a connection for a long time. You're building up the community. And then usually an opportunity will present itself. Maybe it's just we both finally got the good data. We both have time. We're both, there's some new grant opportunity that we're able to pursue. But that would be my final advice too, would just be don't rush it, develop these connections, meet new people. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, but you don't need to say, hi, nice to meet you. Let's co-author together. Let's just talk and get to know each other. But a lot of this comes from understanding yourself too as a researcher. I probably talked way too long, so thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so good morning again, good afternoon, everyone, again. So I will proceed this way. I will first share my research agenda a little bit as Andrew was doing, then why collaboration were pivotal, let's say, to accomplish these collaborations. And then I was thinking to conclude with few proposals of concrete collaborations we can do if you're interested in the topics I will present. So I thought that a nice way to present my research agenda is through its empirical sites. Actually, when you look at my research production, it's passed it spans across different empirical sites, and each of them allows me to look at different aspects of public governance. Okay, so my work on urban sustainability and digital transformation has allowed me and my co-authors to look at how collaborative governance, how collaboration allows to produce value in society. And how different forms of value are associated with different configurations of collaboration across the private, the public, and the civic organizations. My work on major public projects tried to look at another aspect of public governance. Collaboration is not harmonious. Since we have different actors, these actors, because of the different logics, of the different interests they pursue, different values they have, it holds potential for conflict, right? And so in this piece of work on major public projects, we, with my co-authors, we look at the dynamics of the conflict dynamics and the political and the power dynamics of multi-stakeholders projects. And a more recent area of research is government transparency. If you think of it, in both cases, what allows actors to succeed in their cooperation is information exchange, right? And so you need to have in place institutions, democratic frameworks that allow this interplay between citizens and state. And so in the third area, empirical area of work, we use field experiments to understand how freedom of information laws are implemented and how this implementation enable or constrain the exchange of information between government and citizens. At the end of the PowerPoint, if you want, there is a full slide. You can have the slides. So I just put here the reference, the authors, and each of these area targets different journals. So the first set is more into urban studies journals and policy journals. The second one is more project studies and public management, and this last one is public administration and evaluation. So different empirical sites, but an overarching question that we try to address, which resonate also with a number of issues which have been discussed in this conference also during the opening ceremony, which is how do public institutions produce value in increasingly complex governance systems? Multiple actors, multiple level of governments, multiple views of public value. How do we ensure that value for society is delivered through collaboration? And they bring different answers to this question by organizing collaboration, by mediating conflicts, by ensuring that democratic frameworks enable a fair participation of all the actors involved. So, of course, all this work could have not been accomplished without the collaboration of my co-authors, of my most of the time my peers, and what characterizes each of these area of research is the complementarity among the type of knowledge I bring in the team and those that my colleagues bring in. So most of the contribution I have is in terms of knowledge about public governance, where and dynamics of policy processes and some elements of public management. What my colleagues bring in is, for instance, for the last area I was presenting, the use of field experiments to understand the implementation of FOI laws, I work a lot with public economists. They have a very good knowledge of experimental methods, of theories of principle and agent, and the combination of this with my knowledge has given birth to interesting papers in this area. My work on urban sustainability and digital innovation, usually I work with experts of innovations and scholars coming from management, whereas my work on the politics and power dynamics of major public projects is with policy scholars. So complementarity is important, basically, for collaboration, more than mating with scholars who have similar backgrounds. The second aspect is the way how these happen? Well, of course, there is a research project. As Andrew was saying, if you do not have a research project, it's hard to establish a dialogue, a conversation around how to collaborate. Conferences are important. Usually through conferences, we talk about projects. And then after the conference, there are interactions, exchanges. And one thing that sometimes works is to propose with my peers panels. Why? Because panels attract other scholars working in that area, and this has enabled us, apart from publishing papers, also to coordinate special issues with the papers gathered through panels, for instance. Now we have an edited volume project on freedom of information laws, same process. We apply for a panel in a conference, we attract scholars working on this area. Based on these collaborations, we try to have chapters or papers for a special issue if it's the case of special issues. Of course, there are challenges. I mean, there are different journal expectations. When you work with scholars operating in other fields, the journals they target are not the same. So sometimes we have to, a discussion we have at the beginning is, okay, what are the journals we aim at that work for both disciplines, political science and management? So this is important. We try to make it clear from the beginning. Another one is, especially for projects where the project on FOI and implementation and the experiments to assess implementation have happens in different countries, and cross-country payments for research assistants have research assistants are an issue. Time zones, so very practical things. So there are a lot of issues that you need to solve. And so this is why it's important that you have a good relationship with your co-authors, because you need to be solution oriented. You need to be creative to overcome this solution. So the point is not to have problems, because there are always problems, is the way how together you try to address and solve these problems. And of course, there are huge benefits intellectually, especially when you exchange with scholars that come from different countries, that work in different areas. There is a lot of ideas that come up, and intellectually is very stimulating. And as have you seen in my case, it becomes very productive also in terms of publication. So it's notwithstanding the difficulties, it's a worthy effort. So to conclude, so around these three areas of research, if you're interested, for sure I would like to invite you to be part of the Transact project. So one idea we have is to replicate the field experiments we've done in Belgium. We've done one recently in Romania. In Switzerland, we're going to launch another one in South Africa. It would be nice to have one here in South Korea, also because Asian countries are not studied that much with this type of experiments, so it would be nice. For major public project, we've recently created a network. It's called GRASP, where we're creating an international case bank with major public projects coming from different countries. And so also here, feel free to reach out. We would be delighted to work with you. And of course, smart cities, AI, it's topics that I've mainly investigated with my colleagues in Belgium. So having comparative research on this would be also very interesting. And to conclude, next year, we're going to have at ULB this forum, Europe-Asia Forum. So this could be a venue where we could eventually gather. It's an idea for now. It's developed by the Institute of European Studies of the ULB. But you can bear this in mind. If you're interested, just drop me an email and we can talk about that. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for having me to join this Emerging Scholar Roundtable. So, like I said, I'm currently associate professor at CDU, Hong Kong. I'm also I became a co-editor of the Journal of Regulation Governance last year. Was a big challenge. So. I'd just like to share some of my, experiences about, collaboration and mostly international collaboration. When I was a PhD student and then became an assistant professor, and probably in the last few years I became more established. So my current agenda, my research interest is mainly at the intersection of government and business. So I study, for example, I study regulation and compliance. I study how government interact with business firms. What is the relationship between government and citizens in various policy fields, etc. So this line of interest is actually naturally benefits from comparative and international perspectives. So unlike, I think my collaboration is actually not only within school or public administration, public affairs, but also collaborate extensively with people from law school and also people from business school as well. So I would like to share with you some of the concrete examples that I collaborate with other people, on research papers, on joint grant application, on co-organizing conference panels and other, very interesting initiatives. So unfortunately, I'm an introvert. So I'm not the kind of person that is brave enough to reach out to people by saying that, okay, can we co-author on this project? But I was also very lucky that my PhD advisor was very generous. So he shared his research networks with me when I was a PhD student. But I would say that there's both pros and cons. The bright side of this, collaborating or working with very senior people is that you definitely get to know from the best person who are very senior and who are a good person to work with. But the cons is like, you will be questioned and challenged when you are on the job market, and people might be saying that, okay, what again and again by asking you, oh, what is your contribution by working with this senior person? And I remember that when I was in my first few years as assistant professor, so my dean told me that, okay, you have done good work, but you really need a single author paper to demonstrate that you can do research independently. So, Professor, I didn't count my papers like how many international scholars or I've been working together with, but there are a few examples. So, Professor Shuyan Tang from University of Southern California. I've been working with him when I was a PhD student, and we have a recent paper last year published in PAR. So I think altogether we probably have published 4 to 5 papers together. Again, that is he's a good friend of my PhD advisor, and I was very lucky to learn from him, and also had a half-year study at USC. So Professor Benjamin Van Looy, he's well-known, he speaks Chinese very well, but he's from School of Law. So we had these 2 joint publications. One is because I study regulation compliance, so this is naturally an interdisciplinary direction that people from law school and also people from public policy and public administration are interested to study. So we had one paper looking at the enforcement styles of street level bureaucrats, and that was our first paper. And it was until COVID that one day he reached out to me by saying that they had this huge project to understand how people comply with rules globally during COVID. So he said that, do you want to have a project with me to use China data to study the same set of questions? So I said, oh, of course, that'd be great. So we had another, our second paper was on COVID, and it was part of the great international comparative study. So the third professor here I list here is Professor David Levy-Farr. He was actually the founding editor of the Journal of Regulation and Governance, and we actually don't really have co-author paper, but it was quite a few years ago that I reached out to him that I was interested to apply for a grant, and the topic is actually a very niche area that he is one of the leading scholars in that area. So I asked, are you interested to become a co-investigator with me? Maybe we can, start working on some papers. So he was such a nice person, and he even shared one of his previous proposals on a similar topic with me. I must say that this is probably one of the reasons that the paper get funded in the first in its first attempt. So and another example I would like to share with you is not really about paper collaboration, but some collaborative effort with a group of, scholars in trying to build this societal governance. I mean, the standing working group, a standing working group under EAGLES, European Group for Organizational Studies. I'm not sure how many of you are interested or you are doing organizational studies. So this collaboration did not start like, okay, can we do this together? But it was really like a step and step. We build this step by step. So I used to serve as serve on the committee of the Academy of Management's PMP division. Any of you are AOM members? No. All right. So that was a 3-year service. So I did most of those, routine work, okay, to guest edit those, to review those submissions. But it was until my last year, the conference was in Copenhagen, so I organized this symposium by inviting all these, very famous scholars in different fields, from business school, from school of administration, and also from other areas about societal governance. So I was very honored to have, the two, for example, Paul Adler, he used to be the president of LM, and Jerry Davis, he was the editor of ASQ, the Administrative Science Quarterly, the dream article for organizational studies. So I was very lucky to have them to join my symposium in Copenhagen last year, and it was after the symposium, after conference, so they asked me by saying that, okay, Nicole, we are thinking about having this new sustaining working group for under EAGLES. So are you interested? But make sure that you have time. They told me that I'm an appropriate person, but they want to make sure that I have enough time and also commitment to this 5-year project. So that's why we started this. Apply for to this new standing working group, and we finally get approved. We also get the endorsement from over 100 scholars from different fields worldwide. So just in case you are interested in our activities, and because next year we're going to organize a conference in Liverpool. So, but as you see, that the initiative will only start in 2028. But we have some activities like seminar series and also the conference in Liverpool that we are going to organize. So it was really a good opportunity to work with these many other senior editors and very famous scholars. But to be honest, I didn't expect this to happen. Okay, so that's why I said that this kind of long-term collaboration to work on some really good initiatives, maybe it takes time to build step by step. So I think we've given some of the questions that we are expected to discuss maybe in the roundtable. So just go through very quickly of some of the questions. So I think in my experience is that partner means different things. So it depends on whether you are working together on 1 or 2 papers, whether you are trying to build a long-term relationship, that you even have like a student exchange. So I think my supervisor, my PhD advisor, actually has a very sustainable long-term relationship with his collaborators, because the 2 teams are actually working together in different topics. So it means different things. And if you see from the last example I shared, is that for those collaborative, when you are co-organizing conferences or a 3 to 5 year initiative, that again means different things. So it also means that as a contributor or as part of the of the collaborative initiative, our roles and responsibility are also different. So my final let me wrap up a little bit. So it's about one interesting question: what makes collaboration sustainable? So to be honest, well, my takeaway is that I do not assume like every collaboration must become long term. Okay, because our research interests change, right, as you develop your career. So for example, I think no one will be thinking that we'll be studying AI governance, right, before ChatGPT or OpenAI. So our research interests change, and our network keeps evolving. So usually for me, I always start with the first attempt, learn from it, and also only scale it up when our intellectual fit and work style fit both hold. So sustainable collaboration, as I'm not that established in or very experienced in sustained collaborations, but as I observe from senior colleagues or from the very recent initiative, is that it often needs more social infrastructures like long-term commitment and also financial resources to organize conferences, and sometimes we probably need 2 teams or multiple teams to work together. So I probably will stop here, but I look forward to further discussions with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for 3 wonderful presentations, sharing your thoughts and experience about the international collaboration. And I think it's time to have real conversation from the questions. So okay, then I will begin with my question. So pretty much all of you shared your right side of collaboration, and my question will be did you have any difficulties or hardships during the international collaboration, or the cases that you hesitate to start the collaboration? Mm. Okay, so
Yeah, there's been a couple times where what happens? Sometimes people's timelines just change. Like I've worked with so that was one. She actually brought the team together, had this really interesting idea, and then left academia for practice and did not care about publishing anymore. So then we had to pick it up and keep on going, which we did, and it's really changed. We've looked to see if she wanted to keep on being part of it, and she said no, that's okay, you all can do it. But that really changed it because she was she brought the group together, she kept us together, had the plan, and then relatively suddenly just left, which is fine, and she's living a great life. But that really changed the co-authorship and kind of the dynamic of the team also, and so that was something we kind of had to figure out. We had to have some discussions about what our roles were going to be, what our priorities would be. More recently too, working with different people, especially maybe students who are on the job market. I think I had timeline too, but I saw a timeline on yours, and that gets to be a really big issue because now, I have a job. I don't care if it takes 6 months or 3 years or whatever. I'm happier to go. I had a paper rejected from a long shot journal, but it took 10 months to get reviewed and then rejected. Where if you're a student, that's could be detrimental to your career and getting it. So it might mean maybe you aim a bit lower as a student to get it quicker, but maybe that doesn't fit the whole team. So I've had to deal with some of these issues, and the more I collaborate with other people, the more they come up. But I think just having open discussions is one way to help overcome these. Just be very, very open, like life happens, these things happen. Let's try to be on the same page with it, and just understand we're all working together, and how can we sort this out to balance all these different priorities and trade-offs.
So, well, in my experience, one of the dark side, or I can share 2 actually, and the possible solutions, let's say, to deal with it. So one is free riding. So in the sense that, especially when you have 3 to 4 people in the group, it can happen that you have free riders, and well, these happen, and I do share what Andrew was saying. It is important to make things clear since the beginning. So who does what is the role, and try to, well, what helps me is that every time we have meetings, we have a meeting agenda. So we have an agenda of the points that we will go through the meeting, and after the meeting, a table with who does what, so that next meeting we know basically what has happened. And of course, yeah, you just need to talk about it. It can happen that priorities change, and yeah, you have to reduce commitment. So this is one. Another thing that is important to discuss since the beginning is the roles, and maybe the it has happened, the orders of authors in the paper, especially for junior scholars. Being first author is important, so it's important to be clear about that since the beginning. I say that because some of these collaborators, when I was a young scholar, and in some cases, this was not made clear since the beginning, and of course, this has created tensions, but anyway, discussions that, of course, eventually have worked. So, yeah, maybe one advice is to make things clear since the beginning. Do not be shy or worried about putting forward your needs. As Andrew was saying, the needs change when you are a young or a senior scholar. So it's important that these are put forward. And yeah, this is what I can share about this.
Yeah, I share with my colleagues here that there are there must be, both pros and cons in collaborating with other people. I used to I used to have this period that I was kind of struggling about how to balance my collaborative work with other people, while I was also asked by my dean, you need to have a single author paper. So I think one of the difficulty about working with other people is that we need to, sometimes we're on different timetable, we're following different timetable, that for some of us maybe we're going up for tenure in 1 or 2 years, while others, they already get tenured, or the project that you're working together is not their focus. So I think that time management and project management is key to not just working, collaborating with other people, but also in managing your whole, research pipeline. But yeah, I think that this is especially difficult for emerging or PhD students these days, because everyone became so productive. Like everyone becomes so productive and publish paper very quickly. People are under a lot of pressure to find a job, and also to get tenured. But for me, I think that I treat it as a project man. Sometimes I feel that I'm a project manager that have to manage different projects, and now we have to manage project with PhD students as well. So I think that this is the earlier that for younger or PhD student, the earlier you get yourself adapt into this kind of situation, so you are multitasking, the better you will be able to handle the pressures and difficulties in your future career.
Okay, so thank you for sharing all your experiences. And yes, like free rider timeline, that's always like challenging. I agree. But thanks for the solutions as well. And the next question will be, so you've all shared your like broad research agenda and also the opportunity for international collaboration. But for like those like attendee on the floor who are like really interested in like research collaboration, do you have any like specific agenda looking for collaborator? So can I ask this question? Okay. Yeah. Do you have any like specific research agenda that you're currently looking for? Yeah, collaborators.
So again, my main area is homelessness and housing, but always looking for interesting contexts, because there's a lot of variation across the world, both in the situations of it, what it looks like, even definitions. So uh, within the US, there's different definitions, but like even Australia, United Kingdom have a different definition of homelessness than the United States. There's different definitions or practices, like in Singapore is very different style of how they provide homeless services, and that it's illegal to be homeless, which now the US is adopting these policies. So I think there's a lot of things to learn across the world. And most of the focus has been, especially in the urban journals, there's been cases of different places, but a lot has been US and like Western Europe focused. But I think there's a lot to learn. And as this become a bigger issue, I know in Korea, talking to students who just moved back, how expensive housing is and all these sorts of housing issues. And then I know China's doing some interesting things like major shifts with like taxes and land and things like that. But as this becomes a bigger issue with housing prices too, that's definitely what I'm interested in, these kind of like non-traditional living situations and what this means, especially for like things like resilience of communities, organizations. I'm especially interested in youth experiencing housing insecurity or in kind of non-traditional situations too. And I think there's a lot to learn about this for just general public administration and policy also that hasn't really been explored, and these lessons can be transferred to different places too.
Well, as I was mentioning, my research agenda spans in these 3 areas, and for each of them, we do looking for some collaborators, basically to have comparative perspective of the work that we've done, mainly in Belgium, especially regarding urban sustainability and smart cities. So much of the work we've done is based on local governments in Wallonia, which is the French-speaking region of Belgium. So it would be great to compare the work we've done there with other contexts, South Korea, any other context that is worth it to do that. In our work, we look, an important part of the work we do is the role of policy narratives in change. So this was an element which was raised also during the opening ceremony. Any project of change is a story about the future, is a collective story. And so how these stories are crafted and how these shape cognitive frameworks that contribute to the process of change. So this is, for instance, one of the aspects we looked at. And we try to understand how these stories facilitate the collaborative dynamics among actors and what enables them to come up with a shared story, which also means shared identity, a shared problem to be solved collectively. The work on major public projects also, so it's more about the dark side of collaboration. So basically conflictual dynamics, power dynamics. An important part of this work also revolves around narrative, but basically narratives, so policy narratives again, but narratives that engender legitimacy crisis and lead public projects to fail, and what type of strategies are deployed to realize this kind of boycotting work. Okay, and actually, since as I was also saying, we've seen that in both scenarios, transparency is important. So we've been working a lot on understanding transparency dynamics, the way they work, and so. The field experiments we do on freedom information laws are pretty simple. So we already have all the elements that we need for a collaboration. We have protocols to do the experimental protocols. We have already set the Excel file to code the data. Basically, we submit FOI request to municipal administration. We have some manipulations in the email text, which basically are the basis for our treatment groups, control groups, and we basically then record the disclosure rate. So I put it very bluntly the way these experiments work. Of course, it demands some work. We need to understand the legal framework of the country where we do the experiments. So having a knowledge of these legal frameworks is important. And for this, we do have some funding also to sustain the collaboration. So do not hesitate to get in contact specifically about that.
Okay. If there is one concrete advice that I can give to, especially for PhD students, is that if you're thinking about, starting a collaboration, I think your step one would be to ask questions. So like I said, I'm an introvert, so I don't normally ask questions, and only one thing I told myself is that for every seminar or every conference that you went to, make sure you at least ask one questions, and because you are going to try to make a conversation with the other person, audience, or the presenter that you probably will have similar interest, research interest, right? So it is asking this question, and which will lead to a short or maybe future conversations between you two. I think this is one of the important way that might lead to future collaborations. So, like I said, I became the editor of Regulation Governance, one of the co-editor starting from last year. I think one best part of this job is there are many good parts of this job, but one good part is that I got this opportunity to invite those scholars who I may have interest to work together sometime to review for the paper. So there was this professor who was one of the leading person in my field, is that I invited him to review, and he replied because he cannot review because he has a conflict of interest. But he told me that, okay, I read your recent paper, and I didn't know that, right? If it was not without this, if it is without this, first step interaction, I wouldn't get to know. I only know that he is the leading person in my field, but we really didn't get a chance to talk about maybe some potentials of collaborative research. So he told that he liked my paper and he cited my paper. Then I told him that, I have been inspired by your work a lot, and gradually this could lead to some, deep conversations and maybe future possibilities for collaboration. But to begin with, I think the easiest way is to ask questions, to start a conversation, and this might lead to somewhere.
Okay, so we all heard about the three different answers. So anyone who are interested in collaborating with the scholars who the presenters here, I think this is a great chance to approach. And then, okay, so that was great answers, by the way. So Professor Liu, they briefly mentioned about advice on junior scholars, and as to give some confidence to the PhD students or junior scholars, can you share your first collaboration, how it initiated? I think that might help and give some confidence.
Okay. I remember, so I'm also very introvert too, so I second that, like INFJ, very introvert. Anyways, so my first collaboration though, it was with Serene. We were at University of Kentucky, and so I just finished up my first year, and then we're like, let's go talk about research ideas and stuff, and we just went to Starbucks like every day and just like brainstormed ideas. It's like, here's some things going on. We came up with this idea eventually of like kind of like, and this has been a direction we've still gone, of like spillovers of policies. And so we looked at like housing tax credits, and there's no public housing in the US. What they do is they give tax credits to develop affordable housing. And so we went to see spillovers of that to homelessness. But this came from just discussions, chatting about like ideas. Hey, what's been done? What hasn't been done? Hey, here's something new. We could bring these two pieces together. And again, that's been our strategy for a lot of our research and collaborations is, here's two pieces. No one's brought them together before, but we think these really go together and create something novel. We went to Starbucks a lot, spent a lot of money there. But then over the next year, so again, we didn't totally rush it. We like came up with an idea, wrote a like draft that summer, talked with some professors about it. We redid the whole model. We probably rewrote that paper 3 times, but still had that same core idea and that research question. And so just kept on working with it, getting some feedback. But we kind of understood our working relationship too there. She was on the job market at the time. I was just starting my second year, so I had a bit more time, but we were like, let's get something out kind of fast and submit it. But we still kind of emphasize that quality piece there. And so that's why we really rushed the feedback. But because of that, it meant like, hey, we're up all night working on this paper together, sending drafts to our professors, new drafts every week, because we really had that shared idea. I remember too, we submitted to JPAM, got reviewed, rejected, but got really nice comments. Then we submitted to Urban Studies Journal and got published there. So that was really nice. Also, I think it was in Italy when I submitted that. Fun fact. But that was also a long process too. And then we came up with new ideas too, because we didn't want to stop there. While we're discussing those, I still have the document if anyone wants to see it, because we just have this running list of ideas in a shared Dropbox folder, and it's probably about 300 ideas there. Some are terrible ideas, most are terrible ideas, but some we've come back to, because we came back to one a few years later too that got published in PAR, where it was what if a community makes more homeless shelters, but government versus nonprofit versus together. And so we had to table that idea because we had no data at the time. We didn't know how to do that. Once we both got jobs and had a bit more time, we did the data collection. And then we had another one. It was a first year paper from my class, so back in 2016, that we just published last year. Because again, we didn't have the data at the time, but we had these ideas. And so this too, how our relationship built, it was just talking about these ideas, writing them down, being like, this one's a bad idea, this one's a great idea, but we can't do it right now. And this is kind of how we worked, but it just came from these discussions about like, hey, what's really interesting? What do we think's novel? What's the really, we care about big ideas. We go for the big ideas. We have some small papers too that set up these bigger ideas also. But just from having conversations and we have a lot of fun with it. That's why we published 10 papers together and keep on working together, hopefully for the next 30 years. But just having fun with it and enjoying the time and getting to do this with friends.
So it's the story of my first collaboration is a funny one, and it starts in Italy actually. And basically, it's a story of serendipity. So I was going to the airport to catch the flight, and I found my co-author basically. And was this person was I was then out of my postgraduate training, so I just got my university diploma. I was flying from Naples to Brussels, where I was going to work for the European Union. So before being in the academia, I've been working for a while for the European Commission. And at the airport, I met someone who was a postdoc student when I was graduating at the University of Naples. And he told me, what are you doing? Where are you going? I'm going to Brussels. Ah, okay. Well, years after, I moved from the commission to the university. I started a PhD, and I changed my status in LinkedIn. And this guy remembered that he met me at the airport, that I was going to work for the commission, and he drops me an email, a message. And he says, but what happened? You were not working for the commission? And then we started talking about my PhD project, and the collaboration started. And we've written a couple of papers, and now we also do the field experiments together. So that's my story. Serendipity. So.
My first collaboration is actually my first paper, which was published in PAR. That was a very interesting study, but it's use qualitative design. So in the very beginning, I mean, the co-authorship actually changed a little bit, because in the very beginning, it's just my supervisor and I, because we came up with this idea and the research design together, and we were able to collect some data. But it was until, as we move this project forward, we realized that we need to collect more data. So then at that time, we were, I think we were lucky to have involved another collaborator, co-author, but this is quite instrumental, as you can see, because this person, this co-author, was not in the original plan, but we ran into this, difficulty in collecting data, because that project involves probably at least 2 years of field data collection. So, and with the help of that, the third author, another co-author, the new co-author, basically, we were able to collect more rich and very good data from the field by interviewing different government officials, different, industry, company managers, etc. So that was, I actually learned a little, quite something from that collaboration, is that there's no need for us to assume that this is our collaborators, and we must follow the original design, because sometimes you will just see that by bringing in a new person, that he or she will add some great value to the project, and this could be quite unexpected.
Okay, so now we all learned that everything can happen like, unexpectedly. So okay, so that was like my question, and from now on, let's like open question to the floors.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful advice. And if it's okay, I actually have two questions. And my first question is I think we've heard a lot about how to initiate these relationships, like, for example, Starbucks and asking questions. But what I wanted to ask was, how do we maintain and maintain these relationships? Because either domestic or international ones, because especially if we aim for international collaborations, it's so easy to forget these relationships, because like low contact is kind of a given, and it's kind of hard to meet the people that you're interested in every conference. So I think that's my first question. And my second one is, we've talked about international collaboration, but my research field is in local finance and welfare, and I imagine that it would be much easier to collaborate with someone who is in like public management or other fields within public administration. But it will be much more difficult for me to collaborate with someone who is entirely in another field like economics or political science. So I was wondering how you start interdisciplinary collaborations, and what are the opportunities for such relationships?
So for maintaining, so I agree with the advice of not every like co-authorship needs to be long term. Sometimes it is just like one or two papers. But I still maintain those relationships. Some of it's just going to conferences, calling them up sometimes. Sometimes with some of the previous co-authors, we'll just have a random like Zoom meeting check-in like once or twice a year maybe, just to see how things are going. Talking about our own projects too. But if you want to keep on maintaining it, like one way is to just like look ahead. So think of the big picture, like what's the research agenda. It's easy if you have like a lab or something where it's like, here's our big focus, and it's not going to be just one paper. If we don't have a lab for this, but just like, what's our big question? And so like with Sareem and I say my research agenda is homelessness, but it's really like managing complex systems, especially in mandated collaboration, where there's I'm a finance person too, but there's all these financial incentives to work together, but then also compete with each other for that money. And so that's our big research agenda. It's like how does the structure of this intergovernmental grants change these incentives for organizations and lead to all these other outcomes? And that's why we have 300 ideas there, is what's that big picture thing. For the second question, which was interdisciplinary. So I started that very recently, like a year or two ago. So I got again very like established, and I feel like I start to understand like what public management research is kind of recently. It took only like 8 years to do that. So not until then I didn't start branching out until more recently. We went to the University of Kentucky. Most of our classes were economics, actually. So we had that kind of background of economics and policy analysis. So it was easier with that kind of group and style. But in terms of like working with social workers and public health and I forget who else we're working with, transportation people, that was much more recent, and not until I felt like I had a clear idea, because then I was able to understand, here's what I could contribute to them, here's what they could contribute to us, and how we could like maybe merge these together and say these more interesting things. Like for example, our transportation one, she's using like AI to study like crosswalks and safety of crosswalks. I study homelessness, where people usually have to walk around to different service providers. So we were able to map between the homeless shelters to the day shelter to the other places, the parks and places they would need to go, and come up with a pedestrian like safety walking for someone who's homeless in this city. But like if I didn't understand what I do and what she does, that wouldn't have happened. And so it came a bit later, but like especially if you're doing like local finance welfare things, I think it'll be a lot easier. But I don't know where I'm going with this. I think it goes back to like, don't necessarily rush it. Like, what are our ideas? How can you bring this together? I guess my other piece would be like, you want to establish yourself in your field because you need the job. So if you're publishing in like, it might be a great journal in transportation or something, but if someone in PA when you're applying for the job has no idea what that journal is, that can make it a little bit difficult at first. That would be my one piece of warning. And some advice I've gotten before is maybe when you're first starting, think about that and kind of like the audience who you're speaking to. Feel free to disagree, others.
Well, I will maybe add, so I do agree with the fact that not all collaborations are long-term collaborations, but what can help in terms of sustaining collaborations is first to, well, I will tell you what has happened in my case. Anytime you answer a research question, then it opens new research questions, right? So it's a little bit an endless process research. And sometimes if you find a curious quarter, it's easy to follow and to creativity generate new questions this way. So I would say having like the curiosity to go through the research you do, even when you ask the first research question, is maybe one way. So you choose a person with whom you can explore the curiosity that you develop about a topic. And then this, let's say, is a more soft explanation, in the sense, a more immaterial explanation. Concretely, what I do to sustain collaborations is, well, so first of all, I have a research center doing research stays for my co-authors. They come for co-teaching experiences. So based on the research we're doing, I give them the possibility to give 1-2 classes about that research topic. So during the same research stay, we can work on papers. They can also do some teachings with my students. Okay, so this is, for instance, very practical tips to sustain the collaborations. And of course, at one point, you need to develop a broader research agenda if you really want to sustain that collaboration. Joint research grants are another way to sustain that. A grant which lasts 6 months, 1 year, creates temporal structures. And you have to achieve objectives throughout this structure. And so this will naturally create opportunities through time. So yeah, this is what, once you develop a paper, this is what has happened, for instance, my collaboration with on major public projects. We did a paper, then the paper, usually when you write the discussion section, at one point you have future research directions. And we were like, okay, but why we do not propose a special issue to policy and society to explore these issues? And this is how we move forward. And when you do a special issue, then you gather and you meet new co-authors. And their ideas, their papers start, if you want, materializing the agenda. So this is one way, moving maybe from a paper to a collective work with other peers in your field. For the interdisciplinary research, well, the answer I feel to give you is that this is at least the way I've experienced interdisciplinary collaboration. You usually have a literature domain to which you want to contribute, and there is some explanatory theory in another literature domain which can help you unpack some puzzles that within that theory has not been solved. And so I usually work this way. This is the way, for instance, we were combining policy process theories and management theories to explain what happens within mega projects. Or we brought into the project management literature the notion of wicked problem to conceptualize the complexity, the conflictuality, and the uncertainty that characterizes major public projects. So the cross-fertilization, the conceptual cross-fertilization between a literature domain that needs to be expanded and the toolbox that can come from another literature domain that can explain the first domain is maybe a way that you can try to it's a mechanism that you can try to develop to launch interdisciplinary collaborations.
Oh, okay. And So we have limited amount of time, and I see one more attendee who has a question. So, I mean, Professor Liu, do you mind answering like his question? Okay.
Ah,
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Jacob Reedhead from in Taiwan, National Zhengzhou University. Actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to share that I also have collaboration opportunities. That's why I came to this conference. I'm trained in sociology and organization theory. We have two big grants in Taiwan. We've collected data for two major projects. One is a comparative Taiwan-South Korea political and a party organization project, and another one is for North Korea. And both of these data sets are political organization. So organization in South Korea and Taiwan of party politics and also the electoral politics. So we have maybe 100,000 politicians in Korea, about 60,000 politicians in Taiwan. And we also have all of their positions in party and also legislative leadership. And we just added to that data family ties. So we have about 2,500 family ties in South Korea and about the same number in Taiwan. So we are just, our lab's focus is really to build these data sets, and we just keep layering data, and we have planned in the future to keep layering data. So if and for North Korea, we have similar data sets. We have about 3,000 to 4,000 political officials in central party and government and regional party and government. So my pitch to you, right, is use political organization as an independent variable. Right, this is exactly what you were saying. Right, use political organization as an independent variable. And we're looking for collaborators who can bring a dependent variable, whether it's governance in North Korea or governance in Taiwan or South Korea, governance or public policy. It will be fine. Our collaboration model with our lab is you do the lit review, right? On the front end, you pitch the theory, right? And you can be first author. And we'll choose the journal together, but it's okay if it's a public policy, public administration journal, right? And we'll provide data and support with the data analysis, and we would love to see this data be pushed out into public policy and into governance and public administration journals. So if you're interested in any of those, that's my main reason for coming to this conference is to network and meet folks and to collaborate with especially young scholars who have ideas but don't have the data, right? To push kind of political organization into public administration, public policy. Thanks.
Can I go real quick?
If you're interested, I'll be back here. You can talk later.
That reminded me too. I share all my data. You don't need to co-author with me. You can just use it. So I'll train you how to use it. We have data on every nonprofit in the US, every homeless shelter, connected to the nonprofit data, local government data, all sorts of census micro data, all linked up. We've coded every homeless shelter. There's 25,000 of them and their finances. We know the federal grants they're getting. And so even if you're not interested in the homelessness aspect, it's a really great context to study networks and collaboration and local finances and intergovernmental grants, fiscal federalism. But I just share all that data with everyone. We have data on almost every arrest in the United States over the last few years. We have data on all extreme weather, and happy to just share it with you. So if you want any of the data, I think it's really great context to study some of these things.
Okay. I don't know.
Anything okay. So yeah, I wish I have more time. We have more time to discuss this. So, but we have a limited time. So, thank you so much for like all three panelists' honest and practical advice and reflection. And I hope for the attendees, I hope you enjoy rest of the Kappa conferences, and also our conversation can continue like informally. So please give them a big hand.
Thank you.